Good afternoon, friends, and welcome back to this week's video podcast with, as always, Steve Autrey, the pastor at... Where are you?
I don't even remember, but I do know this, that they could watch this in the morning. So you just said good afternoon.
That's right.
Good wherever you are.
Yeah. Well, whatever time it is and whatever you're watching, this really is Steve Autrey. I really am Paul Thompson.
And despite your disappointment, I still am the pastor at Denver United Methodist Church.
We're here today, and this is a really great week of lections as we follow through the lectionary cycle, preparing this week for what's called Transfiguration Sunday. I've always enjoyed Transfiguration Sunday. There is so much depth to the stories and the lections that lead up to this. And today we're going to be leading off with some conversation around Moses and the book of Exodus and this experience in which Moses becomes, in the presence of God, this whiteness. So, Steve, how does that go?
Well, I'm going to read that for you, but one of the things that is of crucial importance is that we understand the Old Testament. So much of the New Testament flows right out of the Old Testament. And there have been disputes and controversies over the course of the history of the church. Some people said, well, we don't need that Old Testament anymore, right? Well, the reality is, yes, we do, because if we don't understand what the Old Testament is saying, it's going to be very difficult to understand what the New Testament is saying. This week happens to be one of those weeks where if you don't have an understanding of what happens in the Old Testament, it's going to be very, very hard to figure out this strange event that Jesus is engaged in, that happens to Jesus on Transfiguration Sunday.
My folks who've taken disciple from me will laugh. We always say you can't understand the New Testament until you have some understanding of the Old Testament. And this is one of those passages, as Steve says, it's fully grounded. What Jesus is doing is fully grounded in this understanding of especially Moses.
Moses is, for the Old Testament, the most important character. Sometimes we forget that, but for the people of Israel, Moses is to Israel what George Washington is to the United States. Even more so because Moses is the one who leads them out. He's the one who confronts Pharaoh. He's the one who mediates between them and God. He is everything to the people of Israel.
So when we start thinking about Moses and leading the people out of Egypt, out of slavery, that whole Exodus journey, we always tell you can't understand the Old Testament until you understand the Exodus and the exile. Today, as we really ground this passage in the understanding of the Exodus, it is imperative that we see Moses in his role as that intermediary receiving the law from God and helping interpret that law to God's people.
So just to catch us all up, Moses is called by God to go save my people, go lead them out, go free them from the enslavement to Pharaoh. He does that. And as he leads them out, then you get that dramatic moment at the Red Sea where God hardens Pharaoh's heart, sends his army after him. Moses parts the Red Sea. They cross over. Pharaoh's army is destroyed in the sea. And then they enter into the wilderness. That's where they have to form their identity as a people. Part of that identity as a people is to have a common way of behaving. Laws.
One of the things that we often fail to remember once we've finished with those stories in Genesis of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, there is a 430-year gap between the end of those stories and this Exodus story. 430 years in which the people lived enslaved. If there was some sense of identity tied to Abraham and Isaac and his descendants,
it was
over 430
gone,
years, it is gone. And so what Steve is saying
is... Not
this,
gone completely, but it was the dim, dusty recesses of the past.
Would have been all but forgotten, and they needed to have an identity formed, and this story today is part of that identity forming.
So here, the reading is from Exodus chapter 34, verses 29 through 35. Moses came down from Mount Sinai. As he came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hand, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone because he had been talking with God. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face was shining, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation returned to him, and Moses spoke with them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see the face of Moses, that the skin of his face was shining, and Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with him. So, Paul, tell us about this veil. I think you've been asked to wear one a time or two.
Yeah.
It's not because the glory of the Lord shone forth from you, but I know that was a traumatic moment from your childhood when your mom said, put this on before you go out. But help us understand
They
this
used
veil
to tie a
thing.
bone around my neck to get for the dogs to play with me. I never understood that, but yeah. So, thank you, Steve.
Sure.
So for this,
What are
this-
friends for?
Yeah. So this veil thing, if you're familiar with some of the old gospel hymns, "Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow," it's the idea that purity is white. To be in the presence of God. We even talked about it a couple weeks ago in Isaiah 6. When we are aware of the presence of God, it humbles us, it humiliates us, it gets us to the point where we are painfully aware of our sinfulness, and yet also in the presence of God, we are made pure and clean and holy in God's presence. I think this veil is representative that Moses was both receiving the law from God, interpreting the law from God, mediating that law from God, and that in the sense that Moses was caught up in that, he was purified. He was made holy, righteous. white
There's something
before
of
God.
transference that goes on here.
Transfiguration, which we'll get to later in the week. But it's very much the sense in which when we are fully aware in the presence of God, it will not leave us the same. It will make us different.
And that when that happens to Moses's transformation is evidently frightening to those. It's like, we can't even look at you, Moses, which means how far would they be away from God? And so you see this almost tiered system. You have God, you have Moses, you have the people. But even between Moses and the people, Moses has to put on this veil so that he can be in the presence of ordinary people without scaring them off.
So you'll also remember that it was Moses who also wanted to experience the fullness of the presence of God, and God said, the only way I can do that is hide you in the cleft of the rock, and I'll pass by, and all you can really see is when I've moved past.
Right, not the fullness of my
Not the
glory.
fullness of the presence.
So Moses then, the veil represents another layer of separation between God and the people. The way that God seeks to be present with them is through the law, right? And sometimes we think about the law of Moses being as this onerous, hard to do thing, but the purpose of the law is grace. It's to make a space where God and the people of Israel can be together. Someone we both know, Dr. Merwin Johnson, talks about that it's an expression of God's grace to make a way for people to be in relationship with God. But still, within that relationship, it's not up close and personal.
Yeah, the law was given for our benefit. The law is about boundaries and ways that we can live in relationship with God and live in a relationship with each other, which is critical. Steve, I think when we start looking at this passage again, as we start looking for a connection later in the week, what is it that Moses, when he appears on the Mount of Transfiguration, what is that connection to Jesus?
Well, Moses again is the most important figure in the Old Testament. We start Mount Sinai. God shows up on Mount Sinai with power and glory, thunder and lightning, peals of thunder, trumpets. It's the drawing close. It's a way of saying Jesus really is who he says he is. It's a way of confirming upon Jesus the authority that Moses had with Israel. Now, look, you don't need Moses. Moses is handing this off to Jesus.
Yeah, one thing I've always said is mountains are metaphors, especially in the Bible. They're always metaphorical about a little closer to God, the place where you meet God. So tomorrow we're going to dive a little deeper into this story in Luke chapter 9 of the transfiguration of Jesus, and again make that connection between the characters of Moses, Elijah, who show up on the mountain, and the voice that we hear. It's all so cool. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
All right,
Thank you for your time today.